I have an institute at Berkeley College of Music called the Effortless Mastery Institute. And that's something they installed based on my teaching philosophy. And we have other courses in it like Tai Chi, Qigong. So as the artistic director, I go up there 10 weeks a semester, and I just came back last night. So.
Nice.
And I've got a week and a half at home, which is
Nice,
great.
Yeah.
Well, let's give it a shot. I mean, I started playing at 7 when I saw a friend's father playing at his birthday party, and I had seen it on television, but I'd never seen it played live. And I ran home and evidently was very excited about, get a piano.
Yeah.
So they rented a piano with an option to buy, and very quickly I just started figuring out melodies and things, and I thought that's all you had to do. And I ran into the kitchen and I said, "Hey, good news, Mom, I won't be needing those lessons." I just figured out how to play.
Amazing.
First day.
Yeah.
But that was an attitude. I think that attitude I kept all my life.
Huh.
Then I was almost a star at 11, when I had a record out and I was doing TV shows. It was one of those little child star things, and fortunately and unfortunately, it didn't happen. I'm not sure what would have happened if it had. But after that was years of, actually, what I understand you guys are doing. Are you playing weddings and stuff?
Yeah, that's the part of what we're doing, weddings and corporate.
Yeah, I did that from 13
wow.
to 30.
13 years old. Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, what happened was I had a bar mitzvah, and my parents hired a pretty hip band, and I sat in with them, and the guy gave me a job.
That's amazing.
That is pretty fascinating.
So from that day on, I was playing 2 or 3 of those a weekend, and Long Island was a very fertile place for weddings and bar mitzvahs and confirmations and all that.
Right.
Cool.
So I did many years of that, and I learned a lot of stuff from. Back then, it wasn't cover bands or DJs. It was musicians that had just come off the big man era.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you might have a trumpet player, accordion player, or a drummer, and these guys had played the music, so they knew all the intros and the outros.
Right.
And so at a very early age, I learned the most fundamental stuff that would go to playing a standard, we'll say, but in a standard way.
Right.
And that was great because it was a bass line. And then even when I did more exotic things, it was based on this solid knowledge coming off of the Stan Kenton bands and Duke Ellington bands and whatever. So I did that and went to Manhattan School of Music as a concert piano major, and that was a complete bust.
Why do you say that?
Why is that?
Well, because my dirty little secret was I didn't care at all about classical music. But I had gone to the prep division, and then they accepted me, so I thought, okay, here I am. Never even gave it a thought whether I was going to go out there and do this, even though I didn't listen to the music.
Right.
I really was an improviser.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I went to Berkeley wasn't even a lot of love of jazz. I heard, literally, well, this is a school and they improvise there. I said, oh, improvise? Well, that seems to be what I do. So I went there. And that's where I found some footing in jazz, but just in a culture of music. And it was also early 70s. It was a very mystical time. We used to really play with some ideas and that not just the music. And it was a great time of dreaming, But it turned out that I had another kind of message. And I had some teachers that helped me with it, as I talk about in the first book. Just becoming the instrument, not hassling with playing the instrument, but passing over that. And of course, that means great training, because there's 2 reasons you can't become the instrument. One is psychological. Right. You don't believe you're worthy of it, and you put irrelevant thoughts in your head to block what is a very natural function. Right? But the other reason is acquiring language. If you don't have language in a certain music, it doesn't matter that you're a free being. Sure. You're not going to speak. So it's really splitting your mind in 2 places. A very uninspiring place, but the inspiration is focus, and that's practicing things to get them, not so that you play them right, but so you could watch your hands play them, sort of watch them being played.
Right. Okay.
And once you can get to that level of muscle memory, it sort of gets added to your overall game. So you're just playing like you did when you were a kid, but all this other stuff's coming in. You're bringing it in when you're practicing. Mm-hmm. So practicing, and as I got that clearer, people were asking me to teach them, and then private lessons went on to classes at the New School. Arnie Lawrence at New School wanted me to start subbing from people. And the New School was very interesting at first. He had started the jazz school there, and every teacher was like a killer jazz musician from the history, like Jackie Byard or Joe Chambers, or these guys, Bernard Purdy.
Mhm.
These guys were teaching there.
Wow.
So what happened was, as in the tradition of jazz, at least one of them didn't show up every day.
It was
So
a
I was
mystical
subbing
time, you
for
said.
every. Yeah, it was great for me. I was subbing every day for somebody
Wow.
that didn't show up.
Wow.
I'd get a call in the morning, Larry Willis didn't show up. Can you do his class? Yeah, sure, and paying me, So
Yeah.
and I started to develop a way of teaching that taught the freedom when you're playing and to discipline yourself when you're practicing.
Mm.
So just to say that you don't try to get inspired when you're practicing. You're trying to add language that you can't play yet.
Yeah.
So that's a vulnerable time. If you can't do it, you feel like less of a musician.
Sure.
And that's just ego.
Right.
You're every bit of the musician you were, but you're trying to bring in more language. So having support for yourself while you do that, having generosity towards yourself, and then when you're playing, not letting your playing get tainted by what you've been practicing, but it's not ready to go yet.
Well, that's a
So,
tough one, because you're learning to do things one
Yeah,
way,
a
and then
lot
you
of
have to
people just-
not do it when you're improvising.
Well, some people solve the problem, they stop practicing new stuff because it's too confusing.
You're going against
A
everything
lot.
that people have been telling our guests here, which is great.
Especially to do with education,
Oh, good.
music education
Good.
at an earlier age.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's making this separation in your mind. Now it's time to concentrate to see if I can bring some more language in and become comfortable with it. Now it's time to play.
Mm.
And I really try to help, especially in school, people start judging themselves horribly
Yeah.
because they are judged
Mhm.
immediately,
Yeah.
So I try to say to them, you have one thing you're practicing when you're playing, loving your playing. Forget the rest of it. There's nothing you could do to alter your playing while you're playing, but you can
Sure.
let it flow by practicing loving it. So
Mm.
some people would say, well, yeah, I mean, as soon as I play something that I would love, then I'll love it. But it's kind of like a dog chasing his own tail. You never quite get there.
Yeah.
And the way you get there is the opposite. Whatever sound you make, you practice loving it, whether you believe it or not. And after a while, not only do you find you're loving your sound, but that sound is more lovable.
Yeah. That's a great point. Wow.
Frank Zappa once
You
said
know?
that you have to spend, you have to spend 5 minutes every day thinking you're the best.
Mm.
Who said
Frank
that?
Zappa.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's right on. That way you're not, measuring yourself in any
Mhm.
other way. Like, how am I doing?
Right.
Yeah.
This never really doesn't end well.
That's
Especially not in the world of the internet, where no matter
You
how good
start
you
with
are,
how
you'll
my-
always find somebody better immediately as soon as you start scrolling.
Right,
Better.
but from what I call the space,
Space, tell us about that.
you're in this moment,
Mhm.
and it's not a tendency to compare yourself.
Right.
You can try not to compare yourself,
Right.
but that's still being in your ego. That's trying not to do things.
Mm.
When you fall into that space, you suddenly realize that those pressures aren't there, but only as long as you're in that space.
How do you get there? I know a lot of people are
So the
wondering.
practice
Mhm.
is going into that space more and more. And what I like about the second book, it's lessons in self-mastery from music to life.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
musicians may know something that they don't know how to express verbally,
Right.
but if they did, it would be a whole pathway of action for non-musicians.
Mhm.
And I always had this dual thing. Not only did I do what I was talking about, but I could talk about what I was doing,
Right.
Yeah.
And that's been a very freaky kind of talent, which I just haven't looked a gift horse in the mouth. I'm not, if I have it, I give it up,
Yeah.
If I didn't have it, I wouldn't go looking for it because I'm a musician like everybody else. I just want to play and I want to be heard and I want to get paid for it,
There we go.
But I seem to have the language to explain this phenomenon, and it changed my career completely. It even changed my music.
And many others too. I've heard a lot of musicians on all different
Yeah.
levels speak highly of your work. You mentioned the space, which I guess in theory sounds pretty cool and easy enough to wrap your mind around, but in practice, do you have some tips on, well, first of all, can you explain the space a little more? Tell us how it relates to music and even how to get there, how to find it.
Yeah, first, what the space is something that has a name in every other philosophical circles, spiritual circles, religious circles, and I say spiritual and religious because they're not always the same
Right.
thing.
True. Yeah.
Musical circles, psychology,
Right.
and science. Now the brain will even light up in different ways when it's in the space
Mhm.
or when it's in the the crowded world of thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it could be the Holy Spirit, it could be Hashem, it could be superconscious,
Right.
it could be universal mind. When I call it the space, I just thought that was the most non-denominational.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it is the space between the future and the past. And it is the space between thinking and not thinking. Not thinking is the space between two thoughts. Just like a rest is the
Pretty
space
deep. Hold on
between
a
two
second.
notes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is gonna take a couple rewind and playbacks for sure.
Yeah, no
but
kidding.
keep on going.
Could you repeat that last part? It's between the
Yeah.
past and the future. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, the space is
Mark that.
the space between the past and the future. The space is a space between one thought and another, just as a rest is a space between one note and another. But all the power is in the
Understand.
space. No one ever creates well from the past, and nobody ever develops courage from the future.
Wow.
They just develop questions which they can't answer. So in the space, for example, and I did arrange myself around a piece of furniture
Love it.
that does make a sound.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
From the space, these are not good notes. These are notes. And I find from the space, there's no such thing as a bad choice, because choices are intuitive, but rating the choices is intellectual. Rating with a T
Yeah.
is intellectual.
Huh.
And when you rate how you're doing, you inhibit what you're about to do.
So
This
true.
is so common that's why the first book has been all over around the world, and it's been voluntarily translated into about 8 different languages, meaning I never looked to translate it anywhere. Someone would read it in Romania,
Yeah.
and now I'm getting it about this book. I've already gotten a request from South Korea, Italy. The first book has been weird language. I mean, well, just weird choices.
Yeah.
Well,
Unexpected thing.
Right. French, Italian, yes. Spanish, yes. But Romanian, Bulgarian. There's a guy translating it into Farsi right now for Iran. And I don't really, when I say I don't take credit, I'm not trying to indulge in false humility.
False humidity is something we have right now.
Or false humidity, right. It was something I was meant to know. I just know it,
Yeah.
And when I started to speak it, the reactions were even stronger than the music, which I wasn't even sure how I felt about that, It's not that the music's not strong, it's that nothing interests somebody more than something that can improve their power.
There goes the ego
So
again.
when I started to talk about stuff that improved their power, a lot of people started showing up because everybody wants the power to create. The power to create lies very much in the power to support oneself. I mean, inside. I'd rather have that connection between me and the sound I make, even if it's not a good sound, than play reasonably well, because you can't play great and be trying to calculate everything you're going to play, but you could play reasonably well.
Yeah.
I'd rather play badly and really enjoy the sounds I make. But that's evolved over a long period of time. The thing you start doing, okay, so that's what the space is. It perfects you because you're in this moment and you're not thinking. And that's actually perfection. In fact, in this crowded society of ideas and noises and social medias, to me, the most profound state today is to be in this moment, not thinking.
Huh.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
And what I learned is let's not go for 10 minutes of that. Let's go for even a moment of that, but all of it.
Right.
So now I'll show you what I've whittled it down to
Please, yeah.
to put one into space. And it's so simple that I kind of kid Americans. I say, this is so simple, even an American. So, and that was during the administration where I wasn't that thrilled to be an American. But anyway, so, but here it is.
Yeah.
You're all breathing, right?
Yes.
The thing is, every discipline starts with breathing, but we don't need to practice breathing. You've been breathing every moment of your
Right,
life.
True.
In your worst moment, you were breathing.
True.
And in your highest triumph, you were breathing. So you don't need a workshop in breathing. However, if we watch the breathing, I'm not talking about something spiritual. I'm not talking about, don't go there. It's not meditation. It's not spiritual. There's a gizmo in this body that breathes,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to watch it breathe, not even me breathe. I'm going to watch it breathe. And here's the other innovation for 20 seconds. And we're doing nothing more than watching ourselves do something that we've been doing all our lives. So you want to give it a try?
Sure.
Give it a try.
Everybody at home,
Yeah. When I say
Breathe.
go, simply focus your attention on the fact that you are breathing. Okay. Well, and that's the space.
That was nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it's simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you realize is that the reason it's powerful, and yet you don't want to think of it as powerful, you want to think of it as very easy to do, because then you keep doing it.
Okay. Sorry, I don't.
The mind is
Oh,
so
go
like
ahead.
the mind is so reverse psychology. If you started to say, "Wow, that's really important to do," you'd suddenly find it hard to be in the right state of mind to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But if you remembered that you already were breathing, but you were just going to watch it, and for 20 seconds, you can let go of your entire life, because in 20 seconds, you can have it all back.
Right.
Mm.
And in that 20 seconds, if you're really watching yourself breathing, you're not thinking. And if you're thinking, you've stopped watching yourself breathing.
Hmm.
And even if you think, wow, I'm not thinking, you're actually not watching yourself breathe.
wow, look at me not thinking.
No,
Yeah, how about this? But now here's the thing. Every time you do that, even for a short period of time, the mind does take a picture of that. The body takes a picture of it. It starts to become a little piece of you, like a seed, that is perfect. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, depends on the language you want to use. The divine connection,
Yeah.
if you want to look at it in a divine way,
Okay.
is the absence of thought. If you have thought,
Mm.
that's like an M&M and you got the candy coating.
Right.
You can't really absorb anything because you're already bouncing it off with your thoughts of what you think is going on. So the ability to find absolute space by watching your breathing, which also has the same quality of bringing you into the moment, because you only breathe in the
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah.
If the body were a clock, the breathing would be a second hand.
Mhm.
You know, it's every inhale is this moment.
So many
Every
sound bites.
exhale, by the way,
So many.
is a release. Everybody's looking for release, but because they've ignored their breath, they don't realize they get one every other breath. Every time you inhale,
Wow.
the possibility of release exists, you know.
That's really good.
But the more you focus on that, the more the details of your life, the ones that restrict you, move to the background.
Yeah.
And the foreground become, with practice,
Yeah.
this space. And from this space, and why this book is different than the first book, anybody can use this space. They could be steeped in computer language and they suddenly realize that they're trying to control the whole universe, and they go, wait a minute, I can't stop doing this, but I can take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 20 seconds, I'll watch myself breathe. And they can absolutely stop that drama
Right.
and go back to the space. And then the other part that's innovative, if you have found the space, don't try to hold on to it. Let it go before it lets go of you. You know? So in other words, you come, all right, I have a problem. I'm thinking about my future. That never ends well, but I'm doing it. I'm going to take a break and just watch the breathing, right? Now I'm going to come back. I give myself full permission to be enmeshed in my future again. And because I don't resist it, sometimes the problem's not there. Or sometimes I see the transitory nature of it. And the logic, the analogy is very much like clouds and sun. And this is how we can understand it easily. If it's 2:00 in the afternoon and it's almost dark where you're living, you don't think to yourself, wow, the sun is so weak today.
Mhm.
You know for sure that there's a cloud cover that's so thick that it's blocking a light that never dies, a light that's never less hot, less powerful. But these clouds, so it's a perfect analogy because the clouds are temporary. You may look up in the sky in an hour and there be no clouds, and then the sun is doing what it does. And with us, the sun is us. there's a light in you like there's a light in Miles Davis. If you're breathing, Miles Davis was breathing. That means every bit of light that was in him is in you. And the only thing that makes you doubt that is a cloud, a thought. Oh, Miles Davis, but not me, you know. So you start to allow for the transitory nature of thoughts. And you assume, even when you can't see it, that there's a light in you of inestimable power. You know? And I think that's along the lines of everything, meditation. I just think I tried to find the easiest way, the most accessible way. And with a 20-second timeout, a portable way. Because you could be anywhere and someone could be leading you in a direction that makes you uncomfortable. You just go, wait a minute. And you connect with your own breathing and you know that what you're doing is right or wrong. It becomes a very valuable and remains a very portable tool.
It's funny that you've mentioned a few times that you don't want to take it to a spiritual place necessarily, but it's interesting how spiritual practices that involve meditation and breathing from all over the world seem to have converged on very similar ideas, and you're kind of bringing it together. The reason they've converged on them is because there's physical reasons why that works. There are actual biological and mechanical reasons why that works.
Right.
So it's not just hoopla and voodoo, it's real.
Well, the science is catching up to more and more.
Sorry.
Neurology, particularly.
Yeah. Can we talk about the psychology of moving on with the segue of moving on? So I remember working in the studio and talking to the head engineer there about what do I do if in this particular case, my mix is just not sounding right. And I'm listening back after I've released it and I hate the bass. And he told me, you don't hate the bass. That's just the sound of that record. And that changed my mind and the way I look at working and at moving on. Because at some point, especially with art is never complete, right? There's no metric that we can measure and say, okay, this song is now finished or not. But I started to realize that professionals, both musicians and engineers and outside of this industry, one of their strongest skills is knowing how and when to move on and not to obsess.
Well, I think it's a great point, and there's a very clear answer to it. You said it was released already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be my cue to not think about it ever again.
Right.
Easier said than done.
That's what the practice is.
Right.
The practice of choosing to think or not starts with a seed.
Choosing
Okay? I can't say, let's say I'm thinking about that bass all day.
Mm-hmm.
And some states of mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I should really accept it because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And another state of mind, you go back into, oh, I wish I had changed it.
Right.
I guess I guess you could sneak in the studio at night and change it and then get it to the people that produced the CD and see if you can replace the last thing they had, you know. But all these things, they restrict. The worst thing about them is that they ruin today.
Yeah.
You're ruining today
Yeah.
thinking about that bass part. But how do you stop doing it? Well, I will say to myself, or here I am thinking about that bass part again. And I go, I actually have a language for my students. I am thinking about that bass part again. Here's something I can't change, right? That never ends well. When I start thinking about that bass part, that never ends well. Now, I can't stop it because my mind is smarter than I am. I cannot choose to tell it what to think. That then I play right into the devil's hands. You know?
Yeah.
But I can take a break. So I say, okay, you've got me. I'm thinking about the bass. I'm going to take a break. Let's say for a minute. I'm just going to simply watch it breathe.
Mm.
And then I'm going to come back and let you torment me a little more about the bass. So if I spend a minute, and if that's too long, 30 seconds, and all I simply do is watch myself breathe, I've displayed a degree of surrender. I've surrendered, at least for a moment, needing to figure out something, which is a fool's errand anyway, because I can't figure anything out. It's out already. It's done. You know, but you could have made a better example, like before it's released. I keep changing this and I keep changing that. If I find myself doing that, I decide the project's over and I move on. But how do I because after a while, I think there's no relativity. It all sounds better since the last move you made.
Exactly.
And that's
yes.
that's kind of a rock fever that happens by being in the studio too long. It's like when you've been on an island too long, they call it rock fever.
Yeah.
Mm,
There's a studio version of that,
Good point.
And then I go, okay, this is done. Because nobody is going to be in touch with the thing that I'm obsessing about.
yeah, no one's
right
going to
now.
tell or care at that
Right.
point.
But the larger issue is how do I not think about something that there's two problems, okay, that limit your life. Number one, let's say you're thinking about your future. All it is questions that have no answers today.
Mm.
The future, unless you signed a contract and the contract kicks in December of 22, the future is a series of unanswered questions. But trying to answer them will for sure ruin this moment. That could have been done getting to work on something.
Right.
If I was in this moment,
Not
what
in this
could I
guy.
do? And I don't mean a moment where I have an appointment. I mean, maybe I could practice, but practicing doesn't seem like it means anything because I'm trying to contemplate my whole life. So what is that going to do? So there's two ways you inhibit yourself. One, you're asking yourself questions that have no answers. And two, you're ruining this moment, or you are taking 80% of your potential out of this moment. Now, I have wasted years, if not decades, worrying about something other than this moment. And but I've always been there with music. If I put my hand there, that's exactly the right place to be. And I have found that when I am really feeling that, the audience feels the same thing. So there's some kind of a like electrical current that comes from your own self-acceptance that has the same effect on the souls of people who are listening to you.
Interesting.
But regardless of whether that was true or not, in other words, how it impacts other people, the fact is it empowers me to like me, And that's the thing I practiced. And it took a lot longer than in music, because in music, I think I was gifted with it. But in life, I've had to really work my ass off to not put myself in situations that cannot flourish because they're not dealing with this moment. And now I've gotten quite good at it. And even if I don't feel good, I know it's just a feeling. It doesn't mean anything has changed for the worse.
Right.
There's the body and then there's the spirit. And sometimes the body feels bad,
True, yeah.
But it really, the spirit is unalterable. So it's the practice of, like I say, you could meditate, but if you tell me to meditate for 5 minutes, I won't quite get there.
Right.
Because I'll be counting the seconds until those 5 minutes are over. If you say 20 seconds, an uncommitted yogi like myself will go, oh yeah, 20 seconds. And I'll just watch myself breathe.
Yeah.
And that is it. And more you become familiar with it. And then from there, you make your next note. Or you might be mixing a record and you're in that loop. You walk away. When I'm composing, I compose on finale. So as soon as I get too slowed up by the right choice and the wrong choice, I just put the computer to sleep and walk away. Because have you ever noticed you come back the next morning and you know exactly what to do?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So that proves that having the surrender to let go of the situation brings clarity when you come back to the situation.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What made you decide to finally actually sit down and write a book?
Well, I started teaching and everything was for money like everybody else.
That makes sense.
I didn't write a book for money because I didn't know anybody would buy it. But first time I was asked to teach at the New School. And it was funny. Arnie Lawrence called me. He said, Larry Willis didn't show up. Could you cover his
Right.
class?
Wow.
Larry Wilson was a great piano player. So I get there and it was a midterm. I'm thinking, well, first of all, I said to him, I don't teach. And he said, well, it pays $150. And I said, what time? So I get there and it's a midterm. All I have to do is sit in the front. And these kids are doing a midterm. Then they hand them in. They're walking up. Back in those days, the New School Jazz School was so new that you went up and got your check in the office that day. You weren't paid monthly or bi-monthly. Yeah. So I got done. They were leaving, and I'm going up to get my check. And Arnie said, no, man, come. Everybody sit down again. Show them some of your shit, man. Show them some of your shit. So I go, well, I said, if I had just taken a midterm, I'd want to get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't want to stay here. And they didn't know me that well. Some of them knew me. I had somewhat of a reputation back in 89 and 88 and 7. I'm, quite a reputation actually, but a lot of the young ones did not know me, right? So I said, all right, well, I looked at the test and the first question was, what's the first chord of Body and Soul? So I said, what's the first chord of Body and Soul? Kid goes, E flat minor. I go, no, wrong. So they go like, what? So another guy says A flat sus because it's kind of a sub for E flat minor. Yeah. I said, no. People came up with a few more things. And they were very opinionated young men, and they're starting to yell at me. What kind of jive is this, man? This is bullshit, blah, blah, blah.
Jive turkey.
Right? And I didn't even know exactly what I was doing, but I was enjoying their reaction, So finally I said, any chord could be the first chord of Body and Soul. And they went, oh, that's that 70s hippie shit. That's not real. Yeah. So I said, well, name a chord. They name a chord, and they name a B major, and they'd made it the wrongest chord, A over,
Whoa.
Whatever they said, I turned it into the tune and inadvertently gave them the best harmony lesson they would ever have. So Arnie was knocked out with this. He had me coming back every day. And as I was doing this, I was developing a whole language because it wasn't just about the ease of music that people didn't realize. It was about the way they crushed their own energy with these worries, fears, and doubts, And I started making demonstrations about understanding this. It was really weird because there were people who were in my class then, actually some famous jazz musicians like Peter Bernstein on guitar and Larry Goldings on piano, and Brad Meldau was even in the class. And they remember today that when they read the book, they had to laugh because they saw me making this up.
Right.
In these substitute teacher things. Yeah. And then I gave a talk at the International Jazz Educators, and Jamie Abersol, who produces a lot of the jazz how-to books, videoed me, and then he sent the video to different schools, and I started getting calls to do a talk. Which was weird because I was a piano player,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to a school, and it was before the internet. I got to a school in California, and there was a saying on the door, a quote from me.
Nice.
Whoa.
And I'm trying to understand what's going on here. Who cares what I say? I'm going to play,
Right.
So more and more I kept getting that. Evidently, inadvertently, something was coming out of my mouth that was very important to someone else's growth or satisfaction or happiness. So I just went with it. I didn't make calls to do it, but I got calls, and they always paid something. And, and then I developed an empathy for that. And over the years, so at the end of a process, I had actually cats following me around with tape recorders. And I actually thought somebody's going to write a book with all those tapes.
Someone.
So I just sat down and wrote all the licks that I had been saying that I had learned from real-time improvising, And that was the first book. And then, of course, a lot of editing. And 25 years later, I call it a data dump.
Right.
I mean, the information was influencing people so hard that I thought I better write a book because I am, for whatever reason, the author of these thoughts.
Right.
So why should I let another opportunity go by? Someone gathers them all up and puts even Effortless Mastery wasn't really my idea. It was an editor from an article I wrote. She titled the article Effortless Mastery. And when it was time to name the book, I was thinking, Effortless Mastery. Well, that sounds kind of uppity, And my friends are going to ridicule me. So I said, don't write this book for your 12 friends. Write this book for the world.
Right.
So I used a term, and now it is a term, like Alexander Technique, Effortless Mastery. And years later, when I wanted to do less touring, and really, I still get emails today of people that will say, man, I just read your book, the first book, and it changed my life. And I just tried to ignore it and go do my gigs, So about 10 years ago, I just actively changed conception and started to embrace the idea that I was meant to do more than just play concerts, because this stuff I knew it was real because I didn't do anything to acquire it. I didn't go study it and then set myself up as some kind of a expert in anything. I said, listen, this is what's coming out of my mouth right now. It was kind of like that, So then I wrote it down, and the same thing with this book. So much more is uncovered since I've taught the steps of effortless mastery as semesters.
Yeah.
And what happened was people enlightened me. Someone said, I read your book, I shot the best golf of my
Right.
life. I read your book, we need this in our company. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's one of those
Right.
things, you
It's
know?
transferable.
So
Wow.
I only indicated what musicians. In this book, I called it Becoming the Instrument, Lessons in Self-Mastery from Music to Life. And I'm owning what people turn me on to. If they practice these ideas that a musician can use to become personally more successful in their music, they can become personally more successful in their business or in their. I mean, I had some weird letters that one guy in the military could never get his suit on for weapons of mass destruction, like gases
Yeah.
and stuff.
Mhm.
They had a drill. They had to get their suit on in under 4 minutes or something. And this guy could never do it. And he read Effortless Mastery, and then he was able to put his suit on in the right time.
Wow.
I'm going, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
This is, and as long as it's coming out, just let it keep coming out. It was gracing my life. So that's how it turned into
That's
books.
incredible.
I never meant to write a book, but I thought this too. I said it was so much more language now, showing how somebody that's in computer science can use something that a lot of music, and it's not like I'm the only musician that knows this, but there's a trend in music. The people who can really play that way may not have the words.
Sure.
And the people that really have the words often can't play.
Credibility.
The words are great.
Yeah.
You can learn from those
Yeah,
words,
yeah.
but they don't actually know the experience.
Yeah.
So I might be the only person from the trenches that was also able to articulate it. And I can't tell you why that even is, except I ran with it,
That's beautiful.
If the phone rang, I picked it up.
Wow. Actually, this has just been so full of
Yeah,
nuggets,
seriously.
information, gems.
Yeah.
All of us are kind of here just
Oh.
like
Yeah. Sitting
I gotta
quietly.
listen to
It's a
this
pleasure.
again. This has been amazing. I don't even know where to go from here. You touched on every single note that I had in my mind.
Wow.
What do we do?
Well,
Me too.
and that
What do we
often
do?
happens,
Yeah.
There's a connectivity, and I think the less we try to understand it, and the more we watch ourselves breathe,
Yeah, that's huge.
the more we find ourselves connected.
Hey, speaking of connected, do you see yourself in Toronto for anything anytime in the next year or so?
I was in Toronto just before the pandemic. I see myself in Toronto the first time I get a call from what's the club there now?
The Rex?
Or the jazz club?
There's the Rex, and there's a jazz club if it's still there.
So many got
Been there
shut
all-
down, too.
Yeah.
Many years.
We
Anyway,
lost a lot to COVID.
yeah, I mean,
Cavern House?
you guys talk it up, and I'll have my manager call them, and I'll be in
Keep right
Toronto.
in touch with your people.
Yes,
if you want to
please.
make this happen.
There's some connectivity
There
for
it
you.
is. This has been great. I don't know if this is asking too much, but how do you feel about just playing us out? Maybe just like a 30-second.
Yeah, you want to play something?
I mean,
But before you do that, could you just let everybody know how to? Sorry, Andy,
Yeah, no,
how to
that
get a
makes
hold
sense.
of you, your
Yeah.
Instagram if you have one, any kind
Website.
of media that you want
I
to
have
connect.
all that stuff. I have someone manage it, so I'm like about as stupid about it as it can be.
Okay.
But you can always go to my website and you'll see all of it there, kennywerner.com.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And then I think all the hookups are there.
Awesome.
And the book.
And the book.
But you can also get it at Amazon or B&N or whatever,
Yeah.
But you can hook up with me through emailing through my website. And then you also know what other events I'm doing. If
True.
someone thinks, I want to grow in this way, this makes sense to
Yeah.
me, or I already am growing in this way, then I do a lot of things, whether it's classes or events, so that somebody can really work on it.
Amazing.
They can really work on the exercises to expand their own possibilities creatively and technically.
This is very exciting. I'm definitely getting the book. I think we all are.
I am.
We already have one copy in the room right now. It's just talking to you. 2 copies?
Yeah, I have the book.
Ah,
Oh man.
it's
okay.
oh no,
Yeah.
I'm being left out. This is very seriously. I'm beaming with new ideas,
Oh, nice.
living in the moment. Thank you very
Fantastic.
much for stopping by. Thank you for sharing your
It's
knowledge.
been awesome.
And
Incredible, actually.
to play us out, here's Kenny Werner.
All right. Let's see. Maybe I can even give a little bit of piano. Well, oh, it doesn't matter.
Well, we want to
We
see.
might use a little bit. We might use a
Selfishly, we
little
want
bit.
to see.
Okay. Okay, watch the piano play itself.
All right.
nice message. You must believe in spring.
Mind blown. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And please come visit in Toronto.
Oh, I will. I'd love to hang out with you guys. Thank you so much for the invitation.
The pleasure was all ours. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Stay safe.
All right, y'all take care.